All right, guys. So, Donald Trump broke his silence on his candidates getting absolutely obliterated in the midterms, and this is fun to me. This is fun and interesting to me. So, he's pretty much kept quiet on this to this point, and look, I think he did it because he's embarrassed. You know, I think it doesn't take a genius to look at the numbers to see that his most high-profile candidates were the ones who lost the worst. But of course, in typical Trumpian fashion, he's going to come in and deflect as much as possible. So he said the following: "It wasn't my fault." I love that. Oh, right off the bat, that's so Trump. When it's obviously his fault, or at least partly his fault. "It wasn't my fault that the Republicans didn't live up to expectations in the midterms." I like how he put a capital T on midterms. This guy, he's one of a kind, man. "I was 233 in 20. Okay. We'll continue in a second. Let me explain to you why that's totally bogus. What Trump did oftentimes is there were some races where he just endorsed multiple people. He'd be like, I support this one and this one. I forget Eric Greitens and Eric somebody else. MAGA world wanted Eric Greitens. The more establishment Republican was Eric something else. And he came in and said, I endorse Eric. And everybody's like, ha, tee, that's amazing. And then both of those candidates, because they're massive cucks, were like, thank you, sir, you endorsed me. And they both touted the endorsement as if it was true. So he did stuff like that. He also went into races where it was like a R plus 35 district and be like, I endorse this person. And it's like they're either not running against anybody or running against somebody with like literally a 0% chance of winning. And then he takes the ones that are layups and counts them in his overall victory. Now, even doing that, I still think he fudged the numbers. I still think he's not even telling the truth at 233 and 20. That's bullshit. It's a stone cold fact that the closer a candidate was to Trump, the worse they did. Carrie Lake, the biggest election denier running, the most Trumpian candidate running, lost even though she was up like 5 points in the polls heading into election day. Even I thought she was going to win that race. She didn't. Why? She had the stench of Trump on her. Another one, Doug Mastriano, another huge election denier. This is a guy who was at January 6th. He got draxed. He got obliterated. Herschel Walker, he lost. So if you go down the line, and then the Republicans who are not Trump-aligned, like Kemp, for example, who, by the way, stood up to Trump in Georgia and said, I'm not going to fucking steal the election for you. Remember when Trump was like, find me 11,000 votes? Kemp was like, fuck off. What are you talking about? This is crazy. He won in a landslide. So the more regular Republicans, the more establishment-like Republicans, they ended up doing the best. So this is pure cope from Donald Trump. So here's what he says. It was the abortion issue, poorly handled by many Republicans, especially those that firmly insisted no exceptions, even in the case of rape, incest, or life of the mother, that lost large numbers of voters. Also, the people that pushed so hard for decades against abortion got their wish from the U.S. Supreme Court and just plain disappeared, not to be seen again. Plus, Mitch's stupid money. All right, so many things to respond to there. So he's blaming Mitch McConnell like, oh, he didn't open up his wallet enough. That's total bullshit. Mitch McConnell was dumping millions of dollars into all these different races. By the way, Mitch is corrupt. He gets all the money from corporations and billionaires, so the whole system's fucked up. Nobody should be doing that anyway. But he did take the money and give it to all these Republican races. Trump was the one who actually was stingy with his money. Trump was the one who he always has been raising so much money from his base, and he sat on most of it. Why? Because he knows he's running in 2024. He wants to use that money for that. So, did total projection. He's blaming McConnell of what he did. Now, by the way, I'm no fan of Mitch McConnell. I fucking despise Mitch McConnell just as much as I despise Trump. But he's just lying about the facts there. Okay, now on the abortion issue, what he's saying here is 25% correct. It was abortion, a huge strike against Republicans in the midterms. Yes. But what's he not telling you? Who's primarily responsible for getting abortion, Roe v. Wade, overturned in the U.S.? His name is Donald J. Trump. It was Trump who packed the Supreme Court with Republicans, with these Federalist Society goons who are activist judges on the right. Oftentimes the left is accused of, oh, you guys are activist judges. You don't even abide by the Constitution. You don't even abide by precedent, bro. And then they pick right-wing judges who don't abide by precedent. This is just like the Lochner era. It's judicial activism, but from a right-wing perspective. So he packed the court with the conservatives. Now, that's something he bragged about. He's proud of that fact. But now all of a sudden, when the chickens come home to roost, he's like, oh, bro, this is fucking crazy. This is wild. I can't believe that, the Republicans are being too hardcore on abortion. You're the reason Roe v. Wade got overturned. It was because of you packing the court with these right-wing goons. They made the decision. So it starts with you. The buck starts with you. I know that the saying is the buck stops with you, so maybe that's what you say. The buck stops with you, dude. But now, is it true on the substance, though? Like, did abortion hurt Republicans? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, it hurt Republicans. But again, it's like, you did the thing that was unpopular, and then you're like, man, I can't believe this is unpopular. I'm going to blame other people. That's like, how he pretended to be a populist, and then he, like, does massive tax cuts for the rich, and then voters are like, hey, we don't like that. And he's like, damn, this is crazy. All these tax cuts for the rich are wild. Other Republicans should stop doing that. That's you, bro. That's you, dude. So, anyway, classic Trump. Now, also, he says, like, oh, the pro-life people got what they wanted, and then they just disappeared. No, they didn't. They showed up to vote, but there's just not that many of them. On the issue of abortion, the most hardcore perspective, the like no exceptions under any circumstances, and just ban abortion, they represent, depending on what poll you look at, it's anywhere from like 7% of the country to like maybe 19% at most, depending on which poll. So they are a very vocal and loud, tiny minority. And so, yeah, if you super serve those people, they'll come out and vote for you, but you're not going to win. In the same way that, Trump with his election denial stuff, like, yeah, there's what? Half of the Republican base is on board with that stuff. And it's like, okay, so maybe you'll win a primary, maybe. But in the general, no, that's like, 25% of the country, or even less than that actually has that as like their main issue. So he's finally, his like bad political instincts. He used to have good political instincts, but his bad political instincts in the current day are now catching up to him. And so it's classic, like, point the finger at somebody else. The buck doesn't stop with me. It's everybody's fault but mine. And then, he goes on to list things that are partly his fault. And of course, he omits what I told you earlier on, which is the majority of Republicans who are running for office in the midterms were election deniers to one extent or another. Some were more hardcore, some were less, but they were election deniers. And like, those candidates didn't do well, bro. And I think people truly thought, you know what, that's a bridge too far. It's a bridge too far. He's now made this like the core of his politics. He's now retweeting QAnon people and Pizzagate people on a regular basis. He's talking about terminating the Constitution. And so for him to not take responsibility, I mean, look, I didn't expect him to take responsibility, but at the very least, say nothing. Because this is just fucking dishonest here. It's flat out dishonest. No, it is definitely your fault. You are the head of that party. You are the figurehead of that party. And by the way, if he wasn't, the Republicans would have done much, much, much better. Which is why DeSantis now is rising on the right. And more polls come out where he's beating Trump. Because people realize, what if we took the parts that the right-wing base liked about Trump, but mixed it with a less toxic person, somebody who could maybe reach some more centrist type people. That's what DeSantis offers. So, classic Trump. By the way, he was also asked a question at Mar-a-Lago about abortion, and he skipped the reporter and went to somebody else. Why? Probably because he felt like it was a no-win situation for him, because, yeah, he would have to say, that thing I'm responsible for that I did, I don't even agree with the base that I super served. I don't even agree with the far-right position on this. But that's Trump. Like, and this also goes to show you what? Dude, he has no real principles or policy beliefs that he wants to stand by. Maybe there's a few. Maybe you could argue, like, the wall. He actually, like, really wants that or whatever. But on the issue of abortion, it's like, he gave us this extreme set of circumstances, and then now he's like, I don't believe in that. So, final point. I will say this. The semi-credit him on this one very narrow thing, which is, like, Pence doesn't realize or doesn't care that no exceptions on abortion, rape, incest, life of the mother, like, that's idiotic, morally wrong, ethically wrong, and unpopular. And I think Trump actually does, even though it's convenient for him to say it now, I think he actually does realize that, in the same way that, remember when he ran for president in 2016 and he held up the LGBTQ flag? I think Trump accurately understood that even if the base is not with this is where the majority of the country is. And so let me just flirt a little bit with the majoritarian position before I run back to my corner. Now, again, the policies he pushes for are different, right? He said, like, no trans people in the military. He got us overturning Roe versus Wade. But he still has like, I saw some right-winger on Twitter say, Trump being the pro-vaccine, anti-hardline on abortion, moderate candidate, like, that's my kind of guy. And it's like, yes, that it is like a glimmer. If he doesn't have a record where we could show, hey, he's a liar, he doesn't believe these things, he did the opposite of what he's saying he did. If this was just in a vacuum, him saying, like, I'm a Republican and I think there should be exceptions for rape, incest, life with mother, that would be good politics. But again, the flaw he's facing now is now you have a record. Now we know what you did as president. You were a standard establishment Republican. We know how you governed. We know what policies you brought us. And then now you could try to pander to the majority or point fingers elsewhere, but it's not going to work as well. Because when you're an outsider and you have no record, it's easier to say, I want to do X. And then people take it at your word. Now you say, I want to do X. And it's like, well, you did Y. You didn't do X. So anyway, he's imploding. He's miserable. There was a poll that came out a while ago, 30% approval rating for Trump, his lowest since entering politics. Then there was another one from a more reputable polling outlet, 31% approval rating. So he's down in the dumps. And that's why he's flipping out. That's why he's pointing fingers everywhere else, because he knows he's slipping out of relevancy and slipping fast. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.